Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for choosing PACIS TV. This is the time for news in English. I am Benjamin Kwizera and I give you a warm welcome. These are the headlines. On the final day of the commemoration week of the genocide against the Tutsi perpetrated, politicians gathered at the Rebero Memorial Site to honor and commemorate the politicians who were buried there. The Minister of Emergency Management, retired Major General Albert Murasira, called on local authorities and residents to remain vigilant and strengthen national unity, working together with all Rwandans to build peaceful country with sustainable development. His Holiness the Pope Leon XIV lands in Algeria for a historic visit as he starts Africa tour. The Pope will also visit different countries like Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea during 11-day trips to the continent. South Korea's president has angered the Israeli government by sharing video on social media from 2024 that shows Israeli soldiers pushing body of the building in the occupied West Bank. The news in details is after a short break. Welcome in the news details. On the final day of the commemoration week of the genocide against the Tutsi, gathered at the Rebero Memorial Site to honor and commemorate the politicians who are buried there. The news in details. On the final day of the commemoration week of the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi in 1994, some senior politicians in Rwanda gathered at the Rebero Genocide Memorial Site, where politicians who were killed because of their beliefs are buried, most of them having opposed genocide ideology and bad politics based on regional discrimination. In his remarks, the Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, reminded the public of the heroism and selflessness of the politicians buried at Rebero Memorial Site. This day of 13th of April is an historic day in our country's history. The history that is concerned with the liberation war and stopping genocide against the Tutsi. The reconstruction of Rwanda and building the unity of Rwandan society. Minister Bizimana also reminded the public that the moment like this is time to look back where they came from and learn from the good example given by politicians buried at Rebero. This is the time of looking back and analyze the contribution of bad politics, and we give our respect to Hutu politicians who refuse to be obsessed to hatred, divisionism, genocide ideology, but they chose to build the Rwanda for all Rwandan by denying Habyarimana's regime and bad politics and ideology. Minister Bizimana also reminded the public that the moment like this, it is a time to look back where they came from and learn from the good examples given by politicians buried at Rebero. Also in his remarks, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana urged the current politician to admit the truth and learn from the past and prevent all the kind of genocidal ideology. And emphasize the unity among Rwandans through admitting the history is true. We as current politicians must learn from our history. We must always know that we can't build our unity without knowing the reason why this unity was once destroyed. We need to help the country to preserve it against genocidal ideology, divisionism, like that of Habyarimana's regime. Let's continue to remember good politicians by learning from their values, proceeding to protect our unity, and On this day, the President of Senate, Dr. Karinda Francois-Xavier, together with other senior leaders in the government of Rwanda and various institutions, led a race at the burial site of those politicians and paid tribute to the victim of the genocide that preserves the history of politicians who were killed for opposing planning and execution of 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Well, today Pope Leon XIV lands in Algeria for a historic visit as he starts Africa tour. His Holiness the Pope will also visit countries like Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea during his 11-day trip to the continent. Papa Leo has begun a landmark to visit Algeria in the first trip to Muslim-majority country by a pontiff. News in the detail.
His Holiness Pope Leo lands in Algeria for a historic visit as he starts Africa tour. The Pope will also visit Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea during his 11-day trip to the continent. Pope Leo XIV has begun a landmark visit to Algeria in the first trip to the Muslim-majority country by a pontiff. The United States-born Pope arrived in the capital Algiers at around 9 on Monday, an AFP news agency journalist traveling aboard the papal plane said. He is expected to pay tribute to victims of Algiers' War of Independence from France later in the day. The 70-year-old pontiff is on an ambitious 11-day tour of 4 countries in Africa, urging global leaders to address the needs of the continent where more than a fifth of the world's Catholics live, according to Vatican statistics. Algeria, however, is an overwhelmingly Muslim country with fewer than 10,000 Catholics among its population of some 48 million people. This is the first time to host a Catholic pope. The trip is aimed at continuing to build bridges between the Christian and Muslim worlds, the Archbishop of Algiers, Jean-Paul Vesco, told AFP. After 2 days in Algeria, Leo will go to Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea in a whirlwind tour of 11 cities, traversing nearly 18,000 kilometers over 18 flights. The 3 Sahara nations the Pope is visiting have populations where more than half identify as Catholic. The Pope, who has emerged as an outspoken critic of the US-Israel war on Iran, has made only one major overseas trip since being elected last May. Visiting Turkey and Lebanon in November and December, he visited Monaco in March. He is expected to touch on many topics in 25 planet speeches over 11 days. Vatican spokesperson Matteo Bruni told the journalist on Friday, given that the 4 nations face diverse issues.
During his historic visit in Algeria, His Holiness Pope emphasized on the significance of forgiveness and thanked Algeria for forgiving each other throughout last decade. Let's listen to the message from His Holiness the Pope XIV.
Algeria is a great country with a long history, rich in traditions, dating back to the time of St. Augustine and well before. It is also a painful history, marked by periods of violence. Yet, precisely thanks to the nobility of spirit that characterizes you, which I sense is alive even here and now, you have been able to overcome these trials with courage and integrity. Your presence here at this monument pays tribute to this history of Algeria and to the very spirit of a people who fought for the independence, dignity, and sovereignty of this nation. In this place, let us remember that God desires peace for every nation, a peace that is not merely an absence of conflict, but one that is an expression of justice and dignity. This peace, which allows us to face the future with a reconciled spirit, is possible only through forgiveness. The true struggle for liberation will be definitely won only when peace in our hearts has finally been achieved. I know how difficult it is to forgive. However, as conflicts continue to multiply throughout the world, we cannot add resentment upon resentment, generation after generation. The future belongs to men and women of peace. In the end, justice will always triumph over injustice, just as violence, despite all appearances, will never have the last word.
The Minister of Emergency Management, retired Major General Albert Murasira, who represents Nyaruguru District in the government of Rwanda, stated that although the government of national unity has prioritized bringing Rwandans together, there are still individuals who promote genocide ideology. He therefore urged leaders and residents of the district to remain vigilant and continue strengthening unity in order to build a country with sustainable development. He further noted that some genocide survivors still suffer from injuries sustained during the genocide and face difficulties traveling to Butare for medical treatment. He requested authorities to bring healthcare services closer to them. The president of Ibuka in Nyaruguru district, Habimana Sididio, urged the genocide survivors to reflect on those who stopped the genocide, including those who lost their lives, and to honor the bond they share with their rescuers. He also encouraged them to prepare to live alongside individuals who were imprisoned for genocide crimes, are now completing their sentences and returning to Rwandan society. After a short break, we will come with international news. Welcome in international news. Let's go straight to United States of America. Oil back above $100 and U.S. blockade Iranian port after peace talks fail. Oil prices surged back above $100 a barrel on Monday after U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the blockading of Iranian ports following the failure of peace talks. Brent crude, the global benchmark of oil prices, jumped by 7% to $102, while West Texas Intermediate rose by 8.7 to $104. The cost of a barrel of oil had plunged well below $100 last Wednesday after the U.S. and Iran struck a conditional two-week ceasefire deal that included opening the Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping route for global oil gas supplies. However, the failure of negotiations has raised concerns that global energy crisis will deepen. The strait, through which a fifth of world's energy shipment powers, has become a flashpoint of the conflict after Iran retaliated against U.S.-Israel strike by threatening to attack vessels that tried to use a waterway. Shipments have largely been at a standstill since the United States of America and Israel war with Iran started on the 28th of February, leading to energy prices surging around the world and pushing up costs for consumers, in particular making petrol and diesel more expensive. However, Iran has continued to export oil. Windward and Maritime Intelligence Forum said that since the 1st of March, more than 58 million barrels of oil have left Kari Island, Iran's main outlet for crude exports. It said more than 90% of these have been directed toward China. Well, let's go straight to South Korea. South Korea's president draws Israel anger by using old video to make points about human suffering. South Korea's president has angered the Israel government by sharing video on social media from 2024 that shows Israel soldiers pushing a body off a building in the occupied West Bank. We need to check if this is true, and if it is, we should find out what measures were taken. That's the words of President Lee Jae-myung said on the post on X on Friday that triggered a rare public spat between two nations with diplomatic relations spanning 60 years. In his post, Lee said there was no difference between wartime killings, the Holocaust, and the sexual slavery of women under Japan's colonial rule of Korea between 1910 and 1945. It was the reference of the Holocaust that appeared to anger the Israel Foreign Ministry, which responded in an ex-post on Saturday, calling Lee's remarks unacceptable. The remarks by the President of Korea, Lee Jae-myung, including the trivialization of the massacre of Jews on the eve of the Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, are unacceptable and warrant strong condemnation, the Israel Post said. The Foreign Ministry Post added that for some strange reasons, Lee had chosen to dig up a story from 2024 and to cite a fake account that falsely presented it as a current event. The incident involving the soldiers occurred during an operation at a time when Israel soldiers were facing direct immediate threats to their lives and had been thoroughly investigated and addressed 2 years ago, the Post said without elaborating on the outcome. Mr. President, it's always better to check before posting, the ministry added. Thank you very much for being with us tonight in PACIS TV News. But before we come to an end, let's go back to the top stories and headlines of tonight's news. On the final day of the commemoration week of the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi, the politicians gathered at the Lebero Memorial Site to honor and commemorate the politicians who are buried there. The Minister of Emergency Management, retired Major General Albert Murasira, called on local authorities and residents to remain vigilant and strengthen national unity, working together with all Rwandans to build a peaceful country with sustainable development. His Holiness the Pope Leo XIV lands in Algeria for an historic visit as he starts Africa tour. The Pope will also visit Cameroon, Angola and Equatorial Guinea during his 11-day trip to the continent. In South Korea, President has angered his Israel's government by sharing video on social media from 2024 that shows Israel soldiers pushing body off building in the occupied West Bank. In the United States of America, the oil prices surged back above $100 a barrel on Monday after the U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the blockading of Iranian ports following the failure of peace talks. The cost of a barrel of oil has plunged well below $100 last Wednesday after the U.S. and Iran struck a conditional 2-week ceasefire deal. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. I am Benjamin Kwizera. This is PACIS TV. Good night.